Batman the Caped Crusader Episode 2. But before we get to that, I think we need to talk about something that some people just don't seem to understand. And I guess I need to use smaller words, so we'll provide a visual aid. So some of you don't know the difference between fans, disagreements with fans, and haters. I in no way, shape, or form insulted my audience. I literally targeted the dregs of society, which are trolls, haters, lowlives, deranged lunatics. With that being said, I present to you Gotham Sewer. These are some of the more colorful comments that I get, which people think end up getting hidden, but the creators on YouTube can see in our dashboard. These are the kind of people that back in the day would be thrown in the stocks and have fruit and salads thrown at their faces because it's well deserved. But this, ladies and gentlemen, is a hater. When I'm describing hater, this is what you should think about. Okay? Are we on the same page now? Does everybody understand? I mean, literally, I'm doing this that anyone, even someone in grade school, can understand that I'm not insulting or berating or being condescending to my fans. These are not fans. These are trolls. These are no ones. These are losers. These are people who are going to live in their mom's basement and amount to nothing. People always ask me, Kwing, why has somebody as wholesome as you caused so much controversy? Because I'm just the guy holding the mirror up, and society doesn't like what they see in the reflection. Nor do SJWs. It drives them crazy. Like putting a cross in front of a vampire. It doesn't sit well with them. They don't like it. They also don't like when I speak the truth because, well, I educate you, the masses, on what's going on, and, well, they can't have that. You all have to believe and think the same things. If you fall out of line with the other NPCs, well, that's a problem for them because they can't control you anymore. Before we get to the synopsis, which you guys seemed to enjoy last time, let's talk about if I like the Caped Crusader or not. The answer is yes and no. The problem with this show is it's incredibly divisive, but it's made to be divisive. There are times when I was cheering and I was very excited my first time through because I finally thought that the show had found its legs. The Catwoman episode, the Gentleman Ghost episode, amazing, great. Very high caliber writing, good character development, good character story, good plot, good pacing, all that fun stuff. It was exciting, and it felt like it would belong in either a Batman Brave and the Bold episode or a C-tier Batman the Animated Series episode. And yes, I said C-tier because even the worst episodes of Batman the Animated Series, which would be C or D quality, are better than any of the episodes in this show. For those episodes in, league with this 10-episode season 1, they shine like diamonds in the rough. And they're great. They don't do anything that I would consider, leaning on a modern audience. It's a great crime thriller, and as well it's a fantastic introduction of a Golden Age Catwoman. Same thing with episode 2 of Clayface here. I think that they did a great job for what it was. The subplot dragged quite a bit with Renee Montoya, and we'll get into that, but the Batman stuff was solid. The investigation stuff was pretty good. The overall story with, Golden Age Clayface being a serial killer is ripped right from the original pages of the comics going back to the 40s. So I think that they did their homework and they did Clayface well. Does that mean this is the best version of Clayface we've ever had in animated media? No, not by a long shot, but it's a different take on the character, and it's not totally terrible. So that should be something that we should, take into consideration. And this is not a tragic character either. So just so you know, there will be spoilers, obviously, because we're going to dive into the synopsis for the Caped Crusader Episode 2, and the villain is Bruce Timm. I'm kidding, but if you know how crazy Bruce Timm is, I mean, it could apply. On with the review. Our story begins with millionaire playboy Bruce Wayne dropping off his movie actress date at her apartment. Everything seems to be going great. She's about to enter her house when a mysterious man approaches her, and she has a horrified look on her face. Okay, let's continue. So the episode resumes with Bruce being interrogated at the new police station because the last GCPD got blown to smithereens, and Renee Montoya literally suspects Bruce Wayne because he's rich and white for the abduction of this famous actress. And Bruce is like, oh, heck no, I don't write it. This is what the show is basically alluding to, okay? Anyway, so she's grilling him. Renee Montoya, this very plump version of Montoya who is kind of like Harvey from the animated series, who just loves donuts way too much. But she's a really smart detective, and she's grilling him, and all of a sudden, Lucius Fox comes in the room looking clean and sophisticated and says, "You can't talk to my client. Bruce and I, we're bouncing." And I'm paraphrasing because I don't know 40 slang, so just deal with it. We have Bruce Wayne in the back of his car, hanging out with Alfred, again calling him Pennyworth. Meanwhile, Al is basically driving Bruce around like he's Little Miss Daisy in the back seat. And together they discuss if Renee Montoya is a good cop or bad. Bruce thinks she's so trustworthy that he actually bugged her before he left. Nice guy. So then we have Renee Montoya meeting up with Commissioner Gordon, and he basically says, "I need you to go investigate some stuff, so go to the movie theater." And we see at the movie studios Basil Carlo, the famous actor who in this series is a very ugly dude who only plays the villain roles in movies. And, you know, he's kind of bitter about it. Anyway, she basically says, "Hey, I need to find out about this missing actress." And the actor is like, "I don't know anything about that." And of course, being the detective that she is, she's able to find out that he has seen her recently, because here he is pictured in a photo with her a few days ago. Renee Montoya does a bunch of detective stuff that nobody really cares about. It's a very boring subplot. And Batman is basically trailing her and following her in case anything happens. She ends up going back to the actor's apartment and finds out he's been murdered. And Batman runs into our Golden Age version of Clayface, which I don't have anything wrong with Clayface, actually. I think he's a pretty cool character, and I like what they did with the Golden Age spin of him because he was a serial killer in the original 1939-40s Batman comics. And, you know, he really likes being a villain. You know, it's a very thespian thing. So he encounters Batman. Batman basically screws up and the guy gets away. And I'm just going to pause it here because we actually do get to see that Batman does care about the innocent, which this is going to be a theme every once in a while, so you need to pay attention to this. But the animated series Batman, who this guy is the spiritual successor for, or rather cheap carbon copy, he has moments in this show where he shows compassion for humans, instead of leaving them for dead or not really caring about what happens to, even if people are bad. There is a moment where Clayface has basically dropped a ladder on this poor homeless guy, and Batman uses all of his strength to keep the ladder from killing this innocent dude down below. And I like these little moments. It would be nice if we would get these little moments more in the show, but we don't. Every once in a while, they sprinkle it in to show you Batman's actually a good guy. So then we find out that the actress is kidnapped, and she is in some type of movie studio being held by this dude that looks like a 1950s evil mad doctor. Renee Montoya goes back and talks to Commissioner Gordon. He says she's a good cop and that she'll eventually find out what's going on. Then we have a gaggle of police officers who then start picking on Renee Montoya, who is supposed to be Hispanic, but she doesn't look like it in the show. And Harvey Dent rolls up and threatens her, because that's what we all think about Harvey Dent, right? He's a guy who threatens and uses his power instead of being, you know, Gotham's White Knight and a good DA and a person who is against crime. Let's make him a criminal. That's a good take on Harvey Dent, right? Not. And Renee's like, "I will never vote for you." And he's like, "Oh, it doesn't matter, because when I'm mayor, I'm essentially going to fire you." That's essentially how the scene plays out. And then we go back to the movie studio for the subplot involved with Clayface, which again is pretty cool. I don't want to spoil too much, but one of the producers or people there ends up having a run-in that is electrifying. We'll say that. In the Batcave, we have Alfred watching a movie with the actress who was kidnapped. And Alfred is like, "Oh, she's not a very good actress, sir." And Bruce doesn't care. He's, of course, you know, wearing the cape and cowl, and he's at his little chair reading books and trying to figure out what happened to this kidnapped actress. And Alfred actually has some zingers here, which was nice to see Fat Alfred get a little bit of love. And he was pretty funny in this, so I like that. I like when Alfred has some good zingers and he's sarcastic and witty, because a lot of people from the 1940s were very sarcastic and witty. So Batman is utilizing a microscope to look up something, and he's able to find a very important clue that leads him back to the movie studios, where Renee Montoya is doing her detective subplot, investigating and like talking to people and whatever. She literally goes on a whole thing, and we see that, of course, Basil was infatuated with the lady actress, and of course, he thought that she loved him, and only if he looked different. Pretty much, this is like a really bad version of Phantom of the Opera, essentially. It's been done to death. So Batman figures out that there's something going on at the movie studio, and he arrives just in time to save another would-be victim from serial killer Clayface, and they fight. So Clayface gets away, and Batman nearly dies, but then he discovers, by accident, like he's an idiot savant, that there are dead people based on folks that Renee Montoya already interviewed earlier that day, but they've been dead for days. How did that happen? We then see, of course, corrupt officers Flass and Harvey Bullock just kind of hanging out when Renee Montoya calls them urgently on the radio to help her, but they can't help her because she's a woman. Oh, I wish I was making this up. Renee Montoya goes to visit the Mad Doctor, who looks like he's from the 1950s serials, or, like, the evil Mad Doctor trope. And, of course, she stumbles into something that's very bad. But before that can happen, Batman is doing his cool investigation after breaking into the police morgue and finds out that murdered man is actually not who he thinks he is. In fact, it's a fake. And then we fast forward back to the interaction between the mad scientist guy and, of course, Renee Montoya, who knows all along that this guy is responsible for abducting everybody, and somehow she's able to fight him until she gets distracted and hit on the head with a crowbar. Now, what's interesting is, years ago, this starring lead of doing the Detective Gumshoe stuff would have been a co-op thing between Renee Montoya and Harvey Bullock because they were partners. They weren't adversaries. But no, they have to make Renee look like she's big and bad because later on in the show, she's going to have a much larger role. But anyway, Clayface, being the villain that he is, monologues everything to Renee Montoya and essentially says, I became evil because the girl I loved rejected me. And I'm just like, that's the whole reason. And then he's like, and then I learned something. I learned that I was born to play the villain. Ha 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 ha. It's just like, oh my gosh. And the first time I saw this episode, I liked it. I was like, okay, that's kind of cool. And, the confrontation between Batman and Clayface was really good. But, of course, then you have to have the damsel in distress not really be a damsel in distress. The actress that's not even a good actress. She's insulting Clayface, who had something horrible happen to him, and his face was all disfigured because of drugs and stuff. But I didn't really go over that because it was kind of stupid what happened. It was a blink and you miss it subplot. His face got all really nice and stuff from being able to change his face, and she rejected him anyway, and he became a jilted lover even though, they were never together. And it's like, dude, seriously, go touch grass. It was dumb. But the fight between Batman and Clayface was pretty good, even though it doesn't last very long. The hero of the episode is Renee Montoya, and Batman is just kind of there. And, of course, Renee turns on Batman in the end, and she turns away, and Batman disappears, and she's like, I'll get you, and then finds out that she was bugged all along. But the thing is, what I find funny is Renee Montoya, in her original incarnation, she was actually a fan of Batman. She realized that he was a guy who was trying to do good for the city. And Renee's got this massive chip on her shoulder like Harvey Bullock. She's basically Harvey Bullock. She's even fat like him. It's like, the show is like, okay, here you go. This is Bullock's role. Bullock's an idiot now, and Renee Montoya is a fusion between Harvey Bullock and Renee Montoya, the character that you actually like from DC Comics, but we're just going to make her insufferable, annoying, but she's one of the only good cops in the show, so you'll have to get used to it, or not. And that essentially is the episode, and be a villain. This show is very, very divisive, and it creates two types of audience. The modern audience, and intelligent people that question everything, and they're like, you know what, this Batman show isn't for me. You might like it your first time through, but this is not a show that is going to last or stand the test of time. This is a show that is going to continue to fuel the fires of animosity and all kinds of stuff, whereas the animated series did it better. Because I know people like to think that the 1990s was all about segregation. That was the 60s, you idiot. Diversity was handled very, very well in the 1990s. It didn't matter a character's skin color, it mattered the strength of their character. And that is the things that were illustrated. And they were given good storylines without forcing things. They were handled respectfully, and they were very interesting characters. The characters in this show is literally a walking parody of conversations on Twitter or hate comments in the comments section. Like, these aren't people. These are basically bots. It's like Batman is the only player in a world filled with NPCs. It's terrible. And this show is not going to stand the test of time. Most people will probably watch the second season, and hopefully they take people's criticisms to heart. Like, it's not as good as I remember the first time. I really think I was dozing off when I watched it, like, at 3 or 4 in the morning, like, a few days ago. Because I don't remember a lot of these subplots. I only remember Batman showing up and kicking butt, and I was like, oh, wow, they did him justice. This feels like a 1940s Batman. Look at him utilizing stuff that's available when he's in the field based on stuff that would have been around in the 1940s for both military and police use. Makes sense. But I guess I dozed off during the subplots because not only were they boring, but they were poorly written, the characterizations were just dull, and it wasn't really a fun detective stuff. Renee Montoya falling leads and stuff like that was, like, somewhat interesting. The only exciting thing was the fact that Batman was shadowing her the entire time. But anyway, that's it for me. Let me know what you thought about episode 2 in the comments section below. Next time we'll be talking about episode 3, The Catwoman, which is actually one of the best episodes of the show because it's just mainly about Bruce Wayne and Selina Kyle and not so much the annoying, insufferable riffraff. And, you know, that's probably something they should consider doing for season 2. Because if they want to make this the Tales of Gotham City, that's fine. Just stop calling it Batman the Caped Crusader when he barely shows up in the show, and it's mostly either about Barbara or Renee Montoya. What to give a score for this episode? Well, it's definitely not an 8. It's not strong enough for an 8. Batman didn't do enough in the show. He's around, and you feel his presence, and you see him, and he's shadowing people, and he's doing his investigations, but he's not really even the second main character of the episode. I would say the central figures for the episode is Renee Montoya and Clayface, and Batman's just kind of like the cameo that shows up and throws punches at the end. Which, I mean, yeah, it works sometimes, and that's kind of how Batman's 40s comics were a little bit, although there was more monologuing of Batman. I mean, the dude would not shut up in the 40s, and, you know, he used to say one-liners. This Batman, as far as I know, hasn't said really any one-liners. He's very, very quiet. Which is fine. You know, I like the stoic, quiet, brooding Batman. That's fine. But if we're just judging this episode based on the qualities of the two characters, Clayface and Renee, probably give the episode a 7. There was some enjoyable stuff, but Renee was kind of irritating in the show. But also, Clayface was kind of irritating. So, kind of the balance is between Batman keeping the show from, or at least this episode, of getting like a 5 or a 6. The same as the Penguin, because it was more entertaining than the Penguin episode, but at the same time some of its story beats and its subplot just kind of dragged on. And also you have to really think of it this way. Clayface is a simp. Clayface really was enamored with this girl. She rejected him, and then he basically plans on yeeting all these people and then yeeting her to prove a point. But at the same time, she doesn't even care about the people that he Minecraft. She doesn't care at all. In fact, she just wants to go home so she can get ready for her next picture. She's kind of pretentious and annoying, and, you know, she never cared about the dude who was in films with her anyway. So the dude fell hard for her, and it was doomed to failure without him even realizing because he was basically blind as a bat. Now, Renee is not that interesting of a detective in this series. She's had really good parts in other shows, but this series in particular, she's not all that interesting. She's about as stale as toast. She's not, like, when she's on screen, she's definitely on screen because she's a very large character. I mean, you can't miss her. But in terms of her investigation skills, they're just so-so. It also feels like Batman's kind of leading her in the right direction. At least that was the impression I got, but, I mean, honestly, the show was putting me to sleep, this episode in particular. So, I mean, I think a 7 is solid. I'll probably change my mind and give it a 6 later and then lower the Penguin down to a 5. But I think that it deserves a 7. It's got good action. It had some thrilling aspects to it. It was a nice homage to, like, horror stuff. And, you know, it was okay. Now, the next episode, the Catwoman episode, that's a really good one. We're talking, like, 9 territory. So, look forward to that one because I have a lot to say about the Catwoman episode, and that's probably going to be a much longer review than this thing. But anyway, now I want to hear from you guys and gals. How did you feel about episode 2 of the Caped Crusader? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Are you on the fence? Let me know in the comment section below. I'll see you guys later this weekend with another Caped Crusader video discussing more of the episodes as we continue our journey to cover all 10 episodes. But anyway, Keep it locked here for more insights, reviews, and discussions on Batman in the near future. And just a reminder, because I legally have to say this, the people that I shamed at the beginning of the video, don't harass them, don't bother them. Their lives are already miserable and they're sad sacks anyway, so don't add fuel to the fire. Just let karma deal with them someday, because it likely will happen. Alright guys, God bless, happy gaming, thanks so much for watching. Later Gothamites, I'm out of here.